Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. I know some people will be trickling in over the next few minutes, but we have quite a full program today, so I am going to get started with some introductions. So first of all, my name is Sarah Lobo. For those of you who don't know me, I am ICAAD's Communications and Development Lead. So ICAAD is the International Center for Advocates Against Discrimination. We are a human rights advocacy and educational center that focuses on building more equitable systems and societies through systems level change. One of our core programs is Artivism, and we really believe that the arts are a powerful tool for building solidarity and connecting people across borders and languages, as well as challenging harmful narratives. So it is really my pleasure to welcome everyone this evening to our virtual artists showcase. Tonight, we will share a bit about the work of some of our Artivists-in-Residence and their journey as artists and as activists, as well as what they're working on at the moment. We are also thrilled to be taking you on a tour of a physical art exhibit that is currently being co-created by ICAAD and the Banaban community in Auckland, New Zealand. So my colleague Erin is here, and she's going to be giving us a tour at the end of this evening. And we will have a short Q&A at the very end. So throughout everyone's presentations and spotlights, if you have any questions, if you could hold them until the end, that would be great. You can also put them in the chat, and we'll be reviewing them as the evening continues. So ICAAD is really grateful to be collaborating with DVN for this event, Dasvandh Network. So I'm going to pass it over to Mandeep, who's here to introduce himself and Dasvandh Network.
Thanks so much, Sarah, and thanks to the ICAAD team for giving us a chance to partner again and join you here today. Thanks everybody for joining. Super excited to see everybody in the room. Just a quick, I want to get to the fun part of all the amazing artists that we have here. Just a quick intro. Again, my name is Mandeep Singh. I'm the Executive Director of Dasvandh Network. If you're not familiar with our work, Dasvandh Network is an online gaming platform where donors and organizations can participate in the spirit of Dasvandh, which is a sick concept around sharing a part of your 1/10 of your earnings back into society. On our website at dvnetwork.org, we essentially have 70 plus well-vetted organizations and projects that are fundraising for incredible efforts across different issue areas. And as donors, you can go and find different causes that resonate with you. Like ICAAD has been a longstanding partner of ours. And then for organizations, it's an additional way to collect more funds from the community to do the amazing work that they're doing. So it's a very brief summary of what we do at DVN. I'm excited to jump into the program. I have the honor of introducing a personal hero of mine and a good friend, Vishavjit Singh. A little bit of background on him. He is a New York City-based TEDx speaker, illustrator, performance artist, storyteller, and creator of sicktunes.com. He got his spark for cartooning in the post 9/11 tragedy when Americans with turban and bearded countenance became targets of hate and bias crimes. And I remember being a young person and seeing the work he did as well. And he really used power of storytelling to create space and have these challenging conversations around identity and race in a post 9/11 world. And his impact has been incredibly positive. So without further ado, I will turn it over to him and have him share his work.
Thank you, Mandeep. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you to the ICAAD and DVN teams for hosting this wonderful session. I'm looking forward to seeing my fellow artist stories. I know at least one of them, but looking forward to hearing their stories. I'm going to try to be very mindful of time here, so give me a moment as I share my screen. Mandeep or Sarah, just quickly let me know if you're seeing my PowerPoint.
Yep, we can see it.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to try my best to go between 5 to 10 minutes here. I see myself sort of as an accidental artist. I didn't sort of dream or plan on becoming an artist. As Mandeep mentioned, the 9/11 tragedy in the US, which had global ramifications, really sort of played a very big role in me becoming a cartoonist and then performance artist. And that sort of led me down a very different journey today in the DEI, diversity, inclusion, equity space, where I'm today. So I'm going to share my story with you through cartoons. That's what I have been doing for the past almost 20 years now. So I was born in the nation's capital in the United States here, Washington, D.C. My parents are from India. I was born in a hospital, which was actually built in the 1860s, serving women during Civil War. And the early part of this century, it was converted into condominiums. So I've spent the first 4 years of my life in the US, and then my parents moved to India, so I moved to India with them. And so there's a few sort of, we all have few things maybe that happen to us that have either in a good or a bad way, consequences. We remember them. They lead us down sort of interesting paths. So for me, I started wearing glasses when I was 6 years old. I'm a 1970s baby. When I was a kid, glasses were not considered cool. So starting, from second, third, fourth grade, got bullied a lot by other kids, at times by cousins as well. I was a shy kid who just sort of didn't know how to defend myself. I didn't get the memo that I should be telling somebody, hey, I'm getting harassed and bullied. So I was a kid who grew up sort of just sort of keeping that all inside. And unfortunately, the glasses played a lot of sort of role in that. So then the other sort of event that happened that really sort of, at the time, I didn't realize this, but it really had a huge impact on me and what I would do in the future, is an event that many, I would say globally around the globe, folks around the globe do not know about this, but in 1984, October 31st, the Indian Prime Minister was assassinated by 2 of her bodyguards who happened to be sick, who happened to look like me with turban and beards. For the next few days, in many cities across India, sick men, mostly men, boys, women as well, were hunted down. Most of the men were burnt alive by having kerosene and gasoline poured on them. I was in the capital city at the time. We had a mob that came to our house. We were fortunate. Some of the kids in the neighborhood, street smart kids, talked the mob out of attacking us. We spent the next few nights in a neighbor's house. And this is sort of, I did this layout for a museum exhibit. So we spend the next few nights staying at a neighbor's house. That's me and I remember us sort of being on the floor, sleeping for the next few nights. The newspapers at the time were reporting these killings as riots, which was an interesting choice of word, which I would learn later on was a very intentional act. So these killings, these genocidal killings, is how I refer to them now, were referred to just as riots. The bottom panel you're seeing is actually, there was one television channel that was broadcasting everything. And as the body of the prime minister lay in wake, there were thousands of people passing by the body. And you could only hear sort of these chants in the background in Hindi, which basically translated mean, with blood we should avenge, with blood we shall avenge blood. This is happening while thousands of people across India are being hunted down. 6. So let me actually go back here. So it was a lot to take. My family was contemplating leaving the capital city to go back to the native state in Northwest India, Punjab. They eventually decided not to. Our local Gurdwara was destroyed. My school, which is an independent school, Sikh school I used to go to, was partly destroyed. It took me a long time to sort of process what had happened. But one thing I learned from this incident is human life is not created equally. We might believe that human life should have the same value, but I learned after this incident, and most of the people who perpetrated and organized this violence got away with this. Most of these people got reelected, promoted, lived as free men for most of their lives. So I learned that lesson pretty early on. Human beings are not created equally. We have different privileges. And if you belong to certain communities, if you die, your life is worth a little less. And I'll come back to this point in a couple of minutes here. So, life goes on. I finished high school and then I came back to the land of my birth, to the United States. I first came to the city of LA, and immediately I had people just sort of stereotyping me, targeting me as somebody who looks different with a turban and barely sprouting beard. People just all kinds of names hurled my way. So when I was in sophomore year in University of California, Santa Barbara, I'm like, I don't want to stand out. I've been bullied, I've been harassed, I've been hunted down. I don't want to stand out. So the only thing I felt I had in my control is, well, I'll just take off my turban, I'll cut my hair, I'll try to fit in. It worked. At some level, I thought it worked. People now saw me as either Hispanic a lot of times or as South Asian. So I went through sort of this long phase of trying to figure out who I was, who I am, how do I fit in, what's my identity. I read a lot of books for the next 10 years. I fell in love with Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism to be precise. I did some Taoist meditation practices. That's a philosophy that comes out of China. And through sort of that, through Buddhism, I sort of became open to spiritual pursuits, and eventually 10 years down the line in my late 20s, moved to Berkeley for grad school, stayed with my brother for a few months, who was really into the Sikh faith. And somehow one thing led to another. I, for the first time, fell in love with the Sikh faith. And I said, okay, I'm going to practice this faith that I was born into, that I thought I was living just because I happened to have long hair and a last name Singh. I realized you have to live that faith to claim that faith. So I donned my turban back on after 10 years from the time that I took it off in sophomore year. So this is what I looked like August 2001, living and working very close to New York City. We all know what happened a month later. This is how I found out. The morning of September the 11th, 2001, I came to work. Google did not exist back then. It was Yahoo News. And I saw this heading, plane crashes into World Trade Center, which sounded really odd. And it was a very short piece. Of course, within minutes and hours, we knew what had happened. And our lives collectively changed forever. But for some of us, Sikhs, it changed in drastic ways. I remember for the next 2 weeks, I stayed home. These are some actual news items. Sikhs, Hindus, Jews, Italians, Hispanics, anybody who could fit the stereotype of being Muslim was attacked, arrested. The first man to be killed in the United States was a Sikh gas station owner in Arizona, Balbir Sodhi. So this was an event that sort of, I'm trying to figure out, okay, what do I do? You know, how do I respond to this? So what came to my rescue actually was a cartoon 2 or 3 weeks after 9/11 that was kind of capturing the predicament of a lot of brown people like myself. And so I had this idea that maybe I should start using cartoons to sort of capture and create cartoons that with characters that look like me. So I created a website a year after 9/11 called sicktoons.com. And there's just a lot of cartoons with turban and beards in there. I wanted cartoons that looked like me. So I did that for a long time. And then 10 years into that journey, I went to my first New York City Comic-Con, one of the biggest comic festivals in the world in New York City. And I had, the festival happens in October. In July, summer, I'm preparing for it. And I happened to see the first Captain America film that came out. And the poster that I saw, I had this vision that maybe Captain America should have a turban and beard. So I created this poster, took it to the Comic-Con as a marketing ploy, and somehow it worked in a weird way. Some people liked it. Some people are like, this is weird. Why does Captain America have a turban and beard? Why is Captain America Muslim? So it started conversations. Somebody requested that I dress up as Captain America. I said, absolutely no way. So this photographer spent an entire year convincing me to don the uniform as a social experiment so we can sort of push people's perception into sort of perceiving me as one of their own. So 2 years down the line, June 2013, I did step out for a photo shoot in New York City, scared, just really nervous, not knowing how people were going to respond. Turned out to be one of the most amazing days of my life. I spent 8-9 hours walking through New York City in my skinny frame with my glasses, turban and beard. And something weird happened. I mean, people, thousands, hundreds of people took photos of me with me. I had strangers who came and hugged me. Police officers took photos with me. I got pulled into a wedding. I got access to a fire department truck. I work for the fire department today, and I never would have fathomed that as a civilian, I could get access to a truck, but I did because I had the privilege of wearing the uniform of a superhero that does not exist, right? That's the power of stories. So I have become a storyteller out of a tragedy of 9/11. And I still, sometimes I'll dress up as Captain America. This photo is from Women's March, the day after Donald Trump was elected president. So almost 1 million people showed up in the Capitol, showing their support for women and a lot of other groups that were fearful of what is to come. My latest project is a short animation film that ICAAD is supporting, as well as one of the co-executive producers. It's the first American short animation film with a 6 story that we are at right now. Me and my creative partner, Ryan Westra, have submitted to a lot of film festivals. We're hoping it goes through these film festivals and maybe eventually lands either on a streaming platform or leads us to creating a full feature-length film. Hopefully you'll hear soon about American Sick. That's my story, and thank you again to ICAAD and Dasvandh Network for hosting my story.
Thank you so much for sharing your story as an accidental artist. I know that is a story that I'm sure has resonated with many people on this call. And please do feel free to drop your reflections or questions into the chat so that people can have a bit of a conversation and engagement. I will move us along to the next presentation in tonight's showcase. And this is a video interview with one of our ICAAD's artivists, Namita Kulkarni. So Namita is actually based in India. So this video has been recorded, and she's a yoga teacher, writer, and artist. She's been teaching yoga for the last 12 years, and her Artivism project aims to demonstrate how colonialism has been and continues to be the major cause of the climate crisis. So I'll let her do the speaking, and I will share my screen. I hope everyone can see that.
You're good.
And enjoy. Yeah. Hello, Namita. Thank you so much for being here with us all today. We are incredibly excited to hear you speak about your latest collection and a bit about your journey as an artist. Can you tell the audience a little bit about how you first became interested in art?
I think I was really young when I first became interested in art. It was something I was drawn to from the time I was a child, to express myself through art. And I had a pretty turbulent childhood. So creativity has been like the crack in the sidewalk through which I've pushed through and tried to reclaim my sense of aliveness and agency through it. And there's something about the strange liberty of creation, which is how I like to call it, which feels like a personal activism because it puts the power back in your hands. You're creating, you're not just consuming. Things are not just happening to you, you're making things happen. So there's a lot of power to be found in creativity, a lot of personal power to be found there. So it is activism on a personal level there. And I've wondered sometimes, how does paint on canvas affect anything out there when it's just so self-serving for me? But I think the role of art is to evoke feelings, empathy, connections, to spark ideas and inspiration. And on that level, I do think art is a powerful tool for societal change. Yeah.
Amazing. And I know that that's really what your collection speaks to. So Namita has been an ICAAD artist in residence for us, and she's been working hard on a collection of paintings, which is centered on colonialism and the climate crisis. So before you get into the paintings, can you tell us a little bit about what inspired this collection?
Well, I've been reading about the link between colonization and the climate crisis, and I saw the call by ICAAD putting out a call saying, we're looking for art based on specific human rights topics. So I figured I'll give it a shot. So I wrote my proposal about how the link between colonization and the climate crisis is so overt that it's covert. When you look at world history, it's so obvious that this is how it began. Now we see the climate crisis being framed as a matter of carbon emissions that we can compensate and offset our way around. But the story doesn't end with carbon emissions. There's a certain culture out of which the problem arises, and that culture is the culture of colonization, the extractive mindset, where it's all about taking and leaving and just grab what you can and get out. So it's something I've been reading about a lot, and the IPCC recently confirmed in 2022, I think in April, their sixth report came out where they said that for the first time they used the word colonization, and they said that is the cause of the climate crisis. And I feel like as an artist, for me to dive into this would be really interesting to make that link explicit and undeniable and just put it out there in paintings. I thought that would be a fun adventure, and it has been.
Without further ado, let's get into the paintings. I know you have some to share with us. So I'll invite you to share your screen.
All right, so this is my presentation. Here is the name of the series is Colonialism and the Climate Crisis. And here are some of the paintings. I have 8 paintings in all. Each of them has a story behind it. And I cannot get into the story behind each of them right now, but I will take you through 2 of them right away. So this is one of my favorites, Apocalypse as Collapse Renewal. Now we think of the word apocalypse as the fiery end of everything, and a lot of climate crisis art feeds into that doomsday narrative that we're just heading towards a cliff edge. What I found interesting about the word apocalypse is that it comes from the Greek word apocalypsis, which means collapse renewal in a hyphenated sense. So this is something I learned from the mythologist Michael Meade, and I loved how it's such a broader interpretation of that word, where he's saying that the seeds of renewal are within the collapse, and that's what apocalypsis actually means. Which makes sense to me because that's how nature works. You have a dead tree in the forest, it is an infinite hotel. So that's a line I got from The Overstory, which is an amazing book by Richard Paz. I can't look at a tree the same way after reading that book, so I highly recommend it. But yeah, the tree in the forest has a bunch of ecosystems going on it. There's a ton of life happening. And you might look at it and call it a dead tree. So that for me is a good metaphor for apocalypse as collapse renewal. And it's for us to align with the seeds of renewal within all the collapse we see right now, where all our major systems are looking like they're going to collapse at any time. And it's for us to align with whatever seeds of renewal we can find in our circles. And within the collapse is where we find the renewal. So I thought that's such a broader framework for the word apocalypse, because we're going to be dealing with that concept a lot as things keep getting worse for us in terms of natural disasters and everything. So yeah, this is a painting that a lot of people have really appreciated, and there's a cobweb in the corner to symbolize how everything is interconnected, especially in a forest. Every part of the forest is the forest. There's no individual in a forest. And that's an indigenous worldview as well, that we're all interconnected. The idea of individual is so abstract and modern. And I mean, what the hell is an individual? Who am I without the web that supports me? So yeah, those are some of the ideas I tried to convey in this painting. And I'll get into the next one. This is called First World Countries. So it's a play on the words third world countries and first world countries. You mix them up and you have first world countries, which is what we're all going to be when the water crisis gets really bad. And we see it getting really bad already. And what I've shown you is that you have certain countries way up ahead in the line. So all those leaves that are drying on that twig are shapes of different countries. If you're geographically oriented a certain way, you'll identify Norway, Sweden, UK, Canada, Russia, there's Australia there, there's a whole bunch of African countries right at the end. So what I'm trying to show you is there is a hierarchy in the way the countries face the water crisis as it gets worse. The countries that have more wealth are ahead in the line, but all that wealth is no insurance against something that is such a leveler, which is the water crisis. So yeah, the idea here was to show that what you might think that your economic riches are protecting you and making you stand ahead of the line, but you're still lining up for a glass of water. And the glass of water is something I made in pencil and wanted it to be in grayscale to evoke a feeling of nostalgia for it, like the way you might take a glass of water for granted today. And that could be something you look back on as a thing of the past. That's something I wanted to bring out in this painting, that the water crisis is something that is going to unite and level and just like level the playing field despite all the hierarchies we have as third world countries and first world countries. Yeah. So yeah, that's about this painting. The World Water Federation report had a list of the way different countries are going to handle the water crisis. And that's where, on the basis of that data, I had this list of countries lining up like leaves on a twig that are drying up.
Thank you so much, Namita, for sharing a bit about these really inspiring paintings. Namita's work will be available in a virtual gallery that will be up on the ICAAD website later this year. But is there any other way, Namita, that people can stay up to date with your work that you would like to share?
Yeah, sure thing. So my email is namitayoga@gmail.com. I would love to hear from anybody who wants to reach out. And I'm also on Instagram as Radically Ever After. That's my handle. And that's also my website, radicallyeverafter.com. So feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from people and any ideas that sparked from any of my art or just anything that you'd like to chat about. I'd love to hear. Yeah.
Great. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed that presentation and conversation with Namita. Each of her paintings that she briefly showed there has a really profound message attached to it, and we look forward to sharing the full collection with you soon. I know Mandeep is dropping some of the ways to get in touch with these artists in the chat, so do feel free to do that, or feel free to get in touch with ICAAD directly, and we can facilitate those connections as well. Moving along, we have a presentation next by Harbani Ahuja. So Harbani is a public interest attorney committed to serving marginalized communities and advocating for human rights in all spaces. She is currently counsel at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, working on economic justice and reducing the racial wealth gap. Harbani's latest project, Dicta, combines her love for the law and poetry and seeks to unearth the essence of decisions by courts of law in order to illuminate the broader societal context in which they were written. So over to you, Harbani.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and so happy to be here and sharing the space with some really incredible artists. So thank you for having me. As Sarah mentioned, I'm one of ICAAD's Artists-in-Residence, and ICAAD took me on as their first Artist-in-Residence back in 2020, and I've been partnering with them to formally create my project, Dicta. So a little bit about Dicta. Dicta was born out of my love for poetry. I became very interested in poetry at a very young age, and I used to love to read and write poetry. And as I grew older, I really fell in love with the idea of using poetry as a means of furthering activism. And that's something that really inspired me, because I think poetry is really just a beautiful and simple way to connect with people. Something that unfortunately the law is not. So I'd love to do a little exercise with you all today. If you could all take a quick moment and just think about the first word that comes to your mind when you hear the word law. So how many of you thought of the word simple or of the word accessible? Probably not very many of you. I think most people find the law to be very difficult to understand, very complex, very inaccessible. You don't pick up, Supreme Court decisions and read them for pleasure. It's just not something people tend to do. And so that was really one of my first driving factors for this project. I really wanted to make the law more accessible, easier to understand and easier to read. So going back to the exercise, how many of you thought of the word justice or the word fairness? Maybe some of you. So that was the second driving factor for the project. I think because the law is so complex and so hard to understand, we often just assume that it's correct or that it's just. And that's because we're sort of trained by society to think about the law in this way, right? So the symbol for the legal field, for example, is Lady Justice. She's blindfolded and holding a scale in one hand as if to imply that the law is blind and just. But it's not. And so I think throughout this discussion, I'd love for you to consider this gap that exists between the law and justice, and think about how in this country's history, how certain marginalized groups for certain marginalized groups, the law has actually been a system of oppression. So I've been thinking, I've been talking a lot about dicta, but really what is dicta? So dicta really seeks to unearth the essence of Supreme Court decisions in the US by illuminating the broader societal context in which they were written. The process is pretty simple. I take a page from a case and I cross out everything except some words, and then those words form a poem. So I've partnered with ICAAD to develop this series with poems focused on several thematic areas. And the first 3 of those themes have been launched in an interactive virtual exhibit. And those are on the rights of women, the rights of Black people, and the rights of immigrants. We chose these themes because they are issues that are really important to me and also tie in with the organization's programmatic work. And we sort of carefully curated case law within each of these themes to be representative of a wide range of issues that go back to the country's early history in order to really illuminate the ceaseless struggle for human rights in this country, and also some of the progress that we've made. So I'd love to share a few of the poems with you. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, hoping you can all see that. So the first poem I'll be sharing is from the Rights of Black People series, and this is a case that you may be familiar with. It's often included in a lot of US history classes, and it's a case from 1857 called Dred Scott v. Sanford.
Dred Scott versus Sanford, United States Supreme Court, 1857. Notice that the Constitution was made exclusively by and for the white race, as white people were left the power to determine who shall be citizens of the United States, the power to deem who is even a person at all.
So this case was actually filed by Dred Scott on grounds of wrongful enslavement. Dred Scott brought this case on the ground that residence in a free territory meant that he and his family were free and they couldn't be re-enslaved. And the Supreme Court took this case and ruled on it that Black people, free or enslaved, could never enjoy the rights of American citizens. Something that we don't typically learn when you learn this case is that the Chief Justice, who infamously wrote the majority opinion, was actually born into a wealthy family of enslavers. And another thing that we don't typically learn is that it was quite common at the time for states' rights arguments to be used to ensure that the American economy could continue to rely on enslavement for labor. So in this case, I really wanted to draw attention to the fact that a group of 9 white men and enslavers were writing this decision. And that's something that we don't often think about when we think about the law. So next, I'll be sharing a poem from the most recently released series, which is The Rights of Immigrants. And this is a case called Korematsu v. United States.
Korematsu versus United States, United States Supreme Court, 1944. The imprisonment of a citizen in a concentration camp solely because of ancestry is unjustifiable, ugly racial prejudice, which was inevitably justified by the court, Congress, and the president. The Constitution means nothing in war.
So in this case, Fred Korematsu is actually a 23-year-old Japanese-American citizen when President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed an executive order which authorized armed forces to remove people of Japanese ancestry and place them in internment camps following the Japanese attacks on Pearl Harbor in 1942. And this caused a relocation of more than 120,000 people to 26 detention camps, some of which are in particularly remote and harsh conditions. Korematsu was a 23-year-old Japanese-American citizen. He didn't comply with the order. He changed his name. He altered his appearance. and he claimed to be of Hawaiian and Spanish descent. The FBI ultimately arrested him and convicted him of violating military orders, and sent him to an internment camp. The ACLU, which was representing him at the time, appealed the case to the Supreme Court, which ruled 6-3 that Korematsu's detention wasn't based on his race, but that it constituted a, quote, military necessity. So when I read this case, I often think, do you guys think something like this could happen today? Could the Supreme Court justify a law that excludes an entire racial community in the US? Unfortunately, I don't think we have to look very far back to find an example. In 2018, the Supreme Court decided in Trump v. Hawaii, in which nationals from majority Muslim countries were banned from entering the US in the infamous Muslim ban, that was justified. So these are just some examples of cases within the DICTA series, and I encourage you all to take a look at the complete series at dicta.icaad.ngo, and you can take a look at the each theme there, listen to the poem, really see the words highlighted as we just showed you on each of the poems, and read some of the background that goes along with each case. My hope is that you all are able to connect with the law in a more meaningful way and recognize this gap that exists between the law and justice, because at the end of the day, the law really is just a reflection of what people in power, the people who sit on our legislatures, the people who sit on our courts, deem to be morally right and wrong. And it's no secret that throughout American history, for the majority, the people who were in power are mostly cis white men. So I really want people engaging with this project to understand the timeliness of the struggle for human and civil rights in this country, a struggle that has existed since our country's foundation, and as you can see, a struggle that very much continues today. And as we, engage with the law in this new way, I hope that we can continue to work together to envision what a more equitable and just legal system should look like. So thank you all for taking your time to engage with DICTA, and I'm happy to answer any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Harbani. And Harbani also has some upcoming collections that she's working on that will be released at some point this year. So I do really encourage everyone to check out the website and go through the sort of interactive features on your own, because there's really a lot to look through there. So yeah, thank you again, Harbani. And we'll move along to our next artist in today's showcase, which is Dilpreet. So Dilpreet is a writer and researcher based in New Delhi, India, with an MPhil from the University of Delhi in comparative literature. Her essays on identity politics, memory studies, representation of refugees, and visual sociology are frequently published in leading books, journals, and magazines. Currently, she is the editorial manager of the magazine Take on Art, which is dedicated to South Asian contemporary arts. And I have a presentation from her to share with you, so I will just share my screen. And if anyone can't hear, then please just let me know.
Thank you, Sarah, for that introduction and technical assistance. Much appreciated. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dilpreet Singh and Hansdeep Singh, the two founders of International Center for Advocates Against Discrimination, ICAAD, for offering a residency dedicated to artivism, under which I can do a project that I had desired to do for a considerable amount of time, and which aims to speak to the current political dynamics of India and South Asia at large. I'm glad to be part of this program organized by Dasvandh Network. The time difference between EST and IST does not allow us to interact live, even virtually, but I try to narrate this presentation with my audio. Before I dive into the project, I would like to briefly talk about why I was prompted to work on the series called Narrative of Object and Voice of Memory. In our current times, when we are under a surge of images, our reality is strongly built on visuals like never before. With the tap of our fingers, the images determine our understanding of reality. This has remained to be true for the representation of refugees. The visuals swarm the social media sites, but somewhere the visual taxonomy of the media representation of refugees and migration has neither garnered the attention of practitioners nor scholars. What we see is a narrow difference between the visual grammar of the documentation of refugees done in the 20th and 21st century. To give you an example, I have juxtaposed the images produced by two photojournalists named Margaret Bourke-White and Kevin Frere. The images were produced at a gap of 70 years. Yet, what we see is a similar approach to capture the displaced. Margaret Bourke-White documented the 1947 partition of the Indian subcontinent for Life magazine, and Frere captured the global uproar against the atrocities committed by the Myanmar government towards the Rohingyas in 2017 for The Guardian. Susan Sontag, the political activist and theoretician, argues on suffering, which the two photo essays personify. The viewer look at the horror to realize the event of suffering is at a distance, far enough from their zone of comfort. The highly textured and essentialist images with bent hand figures awaiting aid, mother and child squatted refugees in these photo essays perpetuate the notion of colonialist imagery. The intrusive act of documenting the refugee is a common phenomena that needs to be readdressed with the tool of subversion. This subversion acts as an entry point to my project, which is an attempt to gauge the limitation of the stereotypical portrayal in the photo essay inherent to traditional othering in the hands of white photographer. Towards this end, my project is an exercise to retrace the intangible memory entwined with the tangible object. During the time of displacement, the objects of necessity and love travel through the ordeal of the journey. Under the patina of age, the objects become a lens to gauge the history of their owner, a source of emotive personal attachment. The voices of the memory peek into the past through the objects to draw an understanding that personal histories are not isolated from the environment of emotional turmoil in which they are developed. The ethic framework of the project gives refugees the agency to talk and speak about a personal memory of loss. To this end, the photo documentation of the object captured with the personal anecdote of refugees allow them to retrace their connection with the object and how they perceive it in a new land. The two-pronged approach of the project are object as the artifact deifies the distance of physical geographies to narrate the history of its owner, and the lived materiality of the object urges the owner to give a voice to her memory, which becomes an act to initiate the process of liberation from the umbrella concept and generative definition of refugees. Over the past 1 year, I have managed to interact with the refugees from Afghanistan, Tibet, and Myanmar currently living in New Delhi, Jammu, and Kashmir. I would like to mention the images that you currently see in the presentation are the first documentation of the objects collected. They are yet to be finally printed along with the hands-on alternate photography that is cyanotyped. The first image is of a necktie worn by a son who was killed in a bombing outside his office in Afghanistan. An official driver by profession, when got into his car to return home, was killed by a bomb blast. The mother, now working with an NGO in New Delhi that encourages women to build a career out of stitching, carried his son's necktie. While leaving Afghanistan, the family had decided not to carry any of the belongings of the son who had died in the bombing. Until now, the mother has not disclosed to her family members that she brought this necktie of her son with the rest of the minimal things they traveled with. More than the photograph of a Tibetan son and a mother, I was moved by the words of the son penned on the back of this photograph. For her mother, whom he could not see for more than 35 years since he moved to Delhi and she remained in Tibet. In a similar vein, the project narrative of object and voice of memory is situated in crucial times of globalization, where we are constantly interested to form a collective identity. The personal possession act as a thread to stitch together the personal histories of refugees and politics of their experience of migration. Going beyond the utilitarian function of the object, the project looks at the practice to politically aestheticize the possibilities and challenges of exile and displacement faced by the refugees. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to Dilpreet's presentation. Please feel free to add any thoughts, reflections, comments in the chat. And we will now move on to our final spotlight for this evening, which is going to be the virtual tour of the physical exhibit that ICAAD has co-created in Auckland, New Zealand. So I will pass it over to my colleague, Erin, to show us around.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here with you all. Can everyone hear me all right? It's a bit echoey in this space.
Yeah,
awesome.
Great.
Well, welcome to our exhibition. It's very unique for us at ICAAD to have a physical exhibition like this. And I'll just share briefly what we have on here. Although there are many layers to this really exciting project, so I'll just give you a snapshot. So we are at Silo 6. Which is a venue that is a reclaimed set of silos on the waterfront in downtown Auckland. It's a very popular venue in a very popular area of town. So we've had many visitors coming through to view our exhibition titled Justice for Rambi, the Story of Banaban, which actually derives from one of our projects with the Banaban community living on Rambi, and has been this great collective artivism project, also featuring the work of our Artivist-in-Residence, Katja, who will be sharing a little bit more about some of her artworks in the exhibition. But just to locate us a little bit, I'll bring us to our map here, because many people don't know where Banaban is or what Rambi is. So here on our regional map of the Pacific, you can see New Zealand at the bottom, and that yellow dot there in the middle, we have Banaban in the Northern Pacific and Rambi a little bit south, located in Fiji. So Banaban was mined by the British Phosphate Commission in the early 1900s until 1979. And in 1945, the British Phosphate Commission forcibly relocated all of the Banabans from Banaban Island to Rambi in Fiji. So this exhibition is a story of that relocation, which is not only a testament to the harm caused by extractive industry, but also the ongoing lessons for us as we think about things like our Right to Life with Dignity project at ICAAD, talking about climate-induced displacement, and how we need to ensure human rights with relocated communities. So what we have in our exhibition, it's actually been co-designed with the Auckland Banaban community and representatives of the Rambi Council and the Banaban Women's Organization. So this first silo is talking about the history of mining. We have a few sort of installation pieces, a bunch of archival photographs, newspaper articles, really bringing together a lot of different works. And I've actually paused our video here just so that we can, you can hear me in the exhibition, but here, when Katja and I visited Rambi in June, we actually recorded 4 interviews with elders who are the only remaining people who remember life on Banaban. So here we have those interviews playing in the exhibit to actually bring those stories into the exhibition space. Now, those stories were shared with us on the condition and imperative that they were shared with the world. So this is one step in that direction. The second silo here, we have life on Rambi. So often when these histories are told, people are not necessarily included. So one of Katja's works was this collection of photo portraits of the elders who we interviewed and various members of the community on Rambi, including the dancing group, who we currently have 8 members of visiting Auckland for our special event tomorrow night. We have the Banaban Women's Organization, including a few of the women who actually made this beautiful woven mats that we see above. I'll just turn that here. This mat is 8 by 3 meters, indicating a timeline of the history of Banaban. So usually you don't see mats of this size, nor ones that are painted on and sort of tell this history in a unique way. In our fourth silo here, we have a collection of artworks sort of sharing the story of old to new. We were able to get a collection of artifacts from the daughter of a mining family, actually, who lived on Banaban in the 1970s. So we see handicrafts here from Banaban. We also have handicrafts woven and created on Rambi, so telling the story of that relocation. And then more similar style of handicrafts woven and created here in Auckland, telling the story of the diaspora as well. Now, there are many more stories and histories behind each of these works, but I'll just briefly take us through. We will have a virtual exhibition coming out, cataloging all of these works and continuing to tell these stories with the world. So stay tuned for that so you can get into a bit more depth. But here we have a recording of the dance group in Suva that Katja and I were able to record. And we do have the dancers here, so they'll be performing live, many of them for the first time ever overseas. 3 of them had never been on a plane before. So really exciting to have our delegation here as a part of the exhibition. And in our final silo here, we have sort of the future. So this woven mat here is made by one of our Auckland Banaban artists for an 18th birthday in July. So life goes on, birthdays continue, and the next generation preserves their culture, even in Auckland, which is a step beyond Rambi as well. We also have a wall here talking about sort of the ongoing climate activism. So there was a delegation on Kiowa for the climate emergency declaration back in October, continuing to share the stories of Banaban relocation as a lesson for the future. And actually our delegation will be at the climate strike in Auckland on Friday, continuing to share those stories with the world. And I have Katja here, who will share a little bit more about one of her installation pieces, which is Between the Silos.
Yes, so this is called The Absence of Water on Our Lands, and based on the quote by Teresa Tewa. And the quote says, "If Banabans think of blood and land as one and the same, it follows them that in losing their land, they lost their blood. In losing their phosphate to agriculture, they have spilled their blood in different lands. Their essential roots on ocean islands are now essentially roots for other places, places like Fiji, New Zealand, and Australia."
And we missed many of the works as we go through the silos, but definitely stay tuned for our virtual exhibition where we'll catalog all of these for you all to see and share more stories about them. I'll share just one last piece here, which is the handicraft market. So one of the issues that we're highlighting with the Rambi community is that they don't have a marketplace on Rambi. One of the many sort of symbols of the lack of attention paid to Rambi. So this is actually one of the few opportunities to have a marketplace, and it's here in the exhibition. So many exciting layers to what we have here at Silo 6, and really excited to share with you all today and to hopefully see you online for our virtual exhibition.
Thank you so much, Erin. I know I wish I was there in person to see it for myself, and I'm sure others share the sentiment. And yeah, we're looking forward to finding a way to share all of this with you virtually as well soon. So that concludes our artist showcase, but I did want to leave a bit of time for any questions or reflections. If anyone has questions for a particular artist, please feel free, or just any general thoughts about any of the pieces or stories that were shared today. You can pop them in the chat, or you could feel free to come off mute and speak directly. Any thoughts, reflections? Aaron, I did actually have a question about one of the big Banaban mat. I was just wondering what it was made from.
Sure, that's actually a great question. So let me, here I can go to the mat here. It's very echoey in here, so I'll try to speak up. So funny enough, the material that it was made with actually tells the story of relocation as well. So it's made with pandanus leaves, which we have an example of in this silo here, sort of the raw material, which you can see here, this sort of dried fiber. But that actually only grows in sort of the middle of the Pacific, sort of in the Polynesian area in Rambi, which is where they were relocated to. So that's actually a story of sort of culture shifting over time. But then these little purple bits that you can see added on were actually brought from Banaban to add to this mat. So that's more traditional weaving from Banaban, but there was not enough material to do the whole mat made out of that. So it sort of shows that change over time.
Awesome, thank you. Really interesting. If there are no other thoughts or reflections, then we can conclude for the evening. Oh, here's a question coming into the chat. Will there be any more live exhibits in the States and any more artivists? Yes, this is a project that is ongoing. So we hope to have both virtual exhibits and physical exhibits for all of our artivists over the next year, and expand the Artivism program over the next couple of years as well, to include sort of a wider cohort. So yeah, it very much stay tuned and watch this space for both more physical exhibits as well as virtual exhibits. We will have some that feature sort of individual artists, so they can go more in depth, some that feature kind of a cohort that are more showcase sort of exhibits. And those will probably be in the sort of New York City area if there are to be some physical ones in the coming year. Awesome. Well, if there are no other questions, if you want to stay in touch with our work, you can follow us, follow our newsletter, and I can pop that link into the chat. And if you also want to support our work, to use art to make justice more accessible, you can head over to dvnetwork.org/legalactivism. Yeah, you can support this project as we try to grow and expand it and feature all of our artists. So thank you again to all of you for being here. And thank you very much to Dasvandh Network for collaborating with us to host this event. It's great to see everyone, and really great to get everyone together to share and to reflect on all of these incredible artists and their work.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it.